It began with a knock. Soft at first, then louder. Bang, bang, bang. "Police, open the door!" The voice was deep, commanding. The kind of voice that made you obey before you even thought. Inside the quiet Minnesota home, a middle-aged couple stirred awake. It was 1:57 a.m. The street outside was still. No sirens, no traffic, just the faint hum of summer crickets. John Hoffman reached for his glasses, half blind with sleep. His wife, Yvette, sat up, her heart already racing. The red glow of the Ring Doorcam light blinked faintly in the darkness, recording every second. Outside the porch window, the man stood in full body armor, a black vest with police stitched across it, a gun holstered on his hip, and a heavy black mask covering his face from nose to chin. His flashlight cut through the window like a blade. "Sir," John called through the door. "What's going on?" The man didn't hesitate. "We got reports of a shooting in your house. Open up, now." Yvette frowned. "That doesn't make sense," she whispered. "What shooting?" Then the porch light caught something. The man's badge. It was shiny, yes, but the letters were crooked. And the mask didn't look like something an officer would wear. She grabbed John's arm. "That's not a cop." The doorknob rattled violently. The man outside shoved his shoulder against the frame, his tone turning sharp and furious. "Open the door!" John tried to push back. "Leave us alone. We're calling the police." That was when the first shot exploded. The Ring Doorcam caught everything. A flash of white light, a scream, glass shattering. The man fired again and again, bullets ripping through the wooden door. Yvette fell backwards, clutching her stomach, her voice breaking as she cried for her daughter upstairs. John tried to fight back, his silhouette framed in the doorway, but the gunfire didn't stop. 9 shots, then silence. The masked man turned his head slowly toward the camera, the tiny blinking light capturing his every move. And for the briefest moment, he seemed to stare right into it. Then he vanished into the night. Inside, upstairs, their daughter Hope clutched her phone with trembling hands. The 911 operator's voice crackled through the speaker. "Ma'am, stay hidden. Help is coming." But outside, the fake officer was already walking back to his SUV. The red and blue lights he'd rigged onto the hood still flashed. Convincing, deadly, and unreal. He started the engine. There were more names on his list. And he wasn't done yet. Hours before the gunfire, the man now known only as the officer sat alone in a dimmer garage lit by a single flickering bulb. The air smelled of gasoline, cold coffee, and gun oil. On the metal table in front of him lay a black leather notebook, edges worn, pages filled with names. 47 names, each with an address, each with a note beside it. Some read, 2 kids, dog in yard. Others said, retired, lives alone. And beside one name, circled twice in red ink, was written, Melissa Hortman, 3:30 a.m. Vance Luther Bolter wasn't a name anyone knew. Not yet. To neighbors, he was a quiet handyman. Polite, soft-spoken, the kind of man who helped carry groceries for elderly women and waved at kids on bikes. But in his mind, a different story had been writing itself for months. Every night after dinner, while his wife and children slept, Vance sat in this garage and planned. He collected newspaper clippings, printed photographs from online articles, and wrote letters to no one. Letters that ranted about corruption, false leaders, and evil hidden in plain sight. He wasn't driven by money, or even revenge. He was driven by belief, a dangerous kind of belief that made him feel chosen. On June the 13th, he finally acted. He laid out the gear he had spent months gathering. A fake police badge ordered online, a silicone face mask molded to hide his features, a bulletproof vest with police printed in bold white letters, a 9mm pistol, 2 extra magazines, and a flashlight. He looked at his reflection in the dusty mirror. For a moment, even he believed he looked like an officer, and that was the point. Before leaving, he sent one final message to his wife. If they come for you, don't stay. Take the kids and go. I'm going to war. At 1:42 a.m., he climbed into his black SUV. A pair of flashing red and blue lights sat taped to the dashboard. When he flipped the switch, the garage walls glowed like a patrol car. He smiled faintly. This would be the night the world finally noticed him. As the tires crunched down the gravel road, he whispered something. Not to himself, but to the empty passenger seat beside him. They'll think I'm one of them. He drove first to Champlin, where John and Yvette Hoffman were asleep. They were just the beginning. By the time the Ring Doorcam recorded its first flash, he had already marked 2 more homes on the list. In Maple Grove, another family's address waited. A house sitting quietly at the edge of a cul-de-sac, lights off, a welcome mat that read, "Home Sweet Home." The engine hummed as he parked across the street, flipping open his notebook again. He tapped the name beside that address, whispering it slowly, almost lovingly. "Kristen Banner, you're next." But inside no one was home. The lights never came on. And for the first time that night, his fake police lights reflected off nothing. Frustration twisted across his face. He clenched his jaw, muttering, "You can run, but I'll find another." He slammed the notebook shut, shifted the SUV into gear, and sped off into the dark. Behind him, a single camera light blinked faintly on the empty porch, recording a man in a police vest disappearing into the mist. What no one knew yet was that his next target was already being protected. The city of New Hope, Minnesota, was asleep and streetlighted. Its flickered faintly in the damp air, and the sound of distant thunder rolled far away. A storm that hadn't quite arrived yet, but inside a black SUV creeping down a quiet suburban road, another kind of storm was about to begin. The man in the driver's seat, Vance Luther Bolter, stared blankly ahead, his gloved fingers drumming against the steering wheel. The glowing blue and red lights taped to his dashboard flashed rhythmically against his mask. His breathing was steady now, cold, focused. He didn't feel human anymore. The next name on his list, Ernst Rest, 3:00 a.m. He whispered it as if reciting scripture. Just a few streets away, police radio chatter crackled through the darkness. The call went out. "All units be advised. Possible armed impersonator in the area. Suspect may be posing as law enforcement. Exercise caution." A young patrol officer, Officer Miller, was the first to respond. She drove slowly past a row of houses when her headlights caught something unusual. A black SUV idling with its hazard lights on. She squinted. The figure inside wore a uniform. At first glance, he looked like one of them. Miller rolled down her window. "Hey, officer," she called out. "Everything all right here?" No response. The man in the SUV turned his head slowly toward her. The mask gleamed faintly in the dashboard light. Pale silicone stretched over lifeless eyes. He didn't blink. He didn't move. Miller's instincts screamed. Something was wrong. She reached for her radio. "Dispatch, I have a visual on a black Ford Explorer." But before she could finish, the SUV's headlights flared to life. The engine roared. The vehicle shot past her cruiser, tires screeching, leaving the faint smell of burnt rubber and adrenaline. "Dispatch, he's fleeing southbound on Cooper Avenue," Miller shouted, hitting the siren. The sound shattered the silence of the neighborhood, lights bouncing off every mailbox and window. Inside the fleeing SUV, Vance gripped the wheel tighter, muttering to himself. Not yet, not here. He wasn't ready for a confrontation. Not yet. His plan wasn't complete. He turned sharply, cutting through side streets until their sirens faded behind him. He needed another target, another chance. The next name in his notebook was circled 3 times. Melissa Hortman, Brooklyn Park. He stared at it for a long moment, then whispered softly, "You'll understand why I had to do this." At 3:30 a.m., 2 local officers, unaware that death was already on its way, pulled into a quiet driveway in Brooklyn Park. They were there for a safety check. Just routine. The house belonged to the Speaker of the Minnesota House, Melissa Hortman, and her husband, Mark. The night air felt heavy. One of the officers frowned. "There's a car in the driveway," he said. "Black SUV." The other officer tilted his flashlight. The beam caught a figure standing by the porch, tall, armored, holding a gun. The fake officer turned his head toward them. For a split second, everyone froze. Then chaos erupted. Gunfire tore through the night. Bullets pinged off cars and concrete as the 2 real officers dove behind their cruiser. The imposter returned fire, his face blank beneath the mask. He moved with terrifying precision, like someone who had practiced this moment again and again. Inside the house, Melissa and Mark jolted awake to the sound of explosions downstairs. Mark grabbed a baseball bat, the only thing within reach, and rushed to the landing. "Melissa, stay back," he shouted. But the sound of breaking glass filled the air. The masked man was already inside. Mark's shadow appeared in the stairwell, illuminated by the flashing red and blue lights bleeding through the windows. Melissa clutched the railing, eyes wide, frozen between disbelief and horror. The fake officer raised his gun. Bang! Bang! The sound echoed down the hall. Outside, one officer screamed into the radio, "Shot! It's fired! Suspect inside! Officer needs backup!" But by the time backup arrived, the house was silent again. The black SUV was gone. The only sound left was the faint ringing of a doorbell camera, still recording through the smoke. A tiny, unblinking eye that had seen everything. The flashing red and blue lights washed over the quiet suburban street, turning every window into a strobe of panic. Within minutes, the sound of sirens layered over one another. Local police, state troopers, paramedics, and unmarked SUVs all flooding the neighborhood. Officers moved cautiously, guns drawn, shouting through megaphones. "Suspect inside, do not move." But the house was already silent. The front door hung open, its hinges splintered. The welcome mat was soaked in rain and blood. Inside, smoke from the gunfire curled lazily through the air. The smell of burnt gunpowder and shattered wood mixed with something far heavier. The metallic scent of tragedy. A faint creak echoed from upstairs. "Clear the first floor." A sergeant barked. Small team advanced up the staircase, each step measured and tense. They reached the top landing and stopped. A body lay still halfway up. Melissa Hortman. Her hand rested against the railing, as if she'd tried to pull herself up one last time. "Officer down! Officer down!" someone shouted from below, mistaking her for one of their own. But when they turned her over and saw her face, a hush fell. Every cop in Minnesota knew who she was, the Speaker of the House. Downstairs, another officer knelt beside Mark Hortman's body near the entryway. His shirt was soaked crimson, his fingers still curled, as though he'd been reaching for his wife. They tried CPR, desperate, counting out loud, but there was no response. From the back door came a sudden crash. "Movement! Back of the house!" They raced out into the yard, but the intruder was gone. Only the wind moved through the trees. The grass was trampled, a gate left swinging open. Tire marks cut through the mud behind the house, leading into the night. The sergeant cursed it under his breath. "He's gone!" Minutes later, a whirring sound filled the air as a police drone lifted off from the street, scanning rooftops and alleyways. Its camera swept over the neighborhood, but the thermal image showed nothing. Just empty driveways and dark rooftops. Meanwhile, across the street, a woman peeked from her window, trembling. She had been awake the whole time and had seen a man in body armor sprint from the house. Before police arrived, she whispered into the phone. He didn't run like someone escaping. He walked like someone who knew he had done exactly what he came to do. By dawn, the streets were locked down. News helicopters circled overhead. Yellow tape fluttered in the wind. Reporters gathered at the edges of the block, their voices trembling as they spoke into microphones. "We're standing outside the home of Minnesota State Representative Melissa Hortman, where a deadly overnight shooting has left 2 people dead and 2 officers injured. The suspect is still on the loose. Inside a nearby command post, detectives gathered around a screen showing grainy Ring Doorcam footage from the first attack. The masked man pounding on the door, pretending to be a cop, then firing. The same man had now struck again. An FBI agent leaned forward, narrowing his eyes. "Pause there," he said quietly. The video froze, the masked figure standing under the porch light, turning his head toward the camera for just one chilling moment. "Zoom in," the agent ordered. The frame tightened around the face. Even under the silicone, you could see something off. Too smooth, too artificial. The agent whispered, almost to himself, "That's not a uniform. That's a disguise." A silence filled the room. Then another agent spoke. Whoever he is, he planned this for a long time. Outside, dawn crept over the rooftops. The streets were empty again, but somewhere miles away, the man they were hunting was already watching the news. Sitting behind the wheel of his bull, ET-riddled SUV, parked in a field, listening to his name being called over the radio for the first time. He smiled faintly under the mask.